The massive doors of the Galactic High Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Captain Daeho Kim stepped inside, his black uniform standing out sharply against the flowing robes and strange suits of the alien delegates around him. The chamber was enormous, shaped like a giant sphere made of clear crystal that floated in space between 6 different star systems. Daeho had been humanity's representative for only 3 months. 3 long months of sitting through endless meetings about shipping routes and mining rights. 3 months of feeling the suspicious stares of creatures who thought humans were too dangerous, too young, too emotional to belong among the stars. Today was supposed to be easy. They would vote on new trade routes through the Outer Rim. Daeho had already read all the documents. Everything seemed fair. He expected to be done within an hour. The High Arbiter, a being named Vaughn who looked like a giant walking crystal, called a meeting to order. Around the circular platform, 12 different species settled into their places. On Daeho's left sat Ambassador Throwkick, an insect-like creature with dozens of eyes that reflected the chamber's lights. On his right, Counselor Yeshna, who looked like a giant intelligent snake, coiled her long body around her platform. As the boring discussion about shipping lanes began, Daeho noticed something moving near the upper observation gallery. A small figure, no taller than a human 3-year-old, had wandered through the entrance. The child had pale blue skin that sparkled like pearls, large dark eyes, delicate features. A Xylene child, Daeho realized, probably belonged to Ambassador Peltic, who sat a few positions away in the circle. The little one walked along the upper walkway, fascinated by the holographic star maps that floated above the council floor. The child reached out tiny hands toward the spinning images of distant worlds. Then everything went wrong. A sharp crack echoed to the chamber like a gunshot. One of the massive viewing windows suddenly split with a long, jagged fracture. Alarm screamed. Red lights flashed. Emergency systems activated automatically, sealing some sections with metal doors and filling others with thick foam to prevent air from escaping. The council delegates moved quickly but calmly toward their designated safe zones. Their movements were orderly and efficient. No one panicked. No one rushed. They were all so calm, so logical, so controlled. No one looked up at the observation deck. No one noticed the child. Daeho saw the small Xylene stumble backward, tiny hands gripping the railing. The child's skin flickered rapidly through different colors, pale yellow to deep purple to almost black. Daeho had studied Xylene biology. He knew those color changes meant the child was terrified. Security personnel in thick protective suits emerged from side doors, checking the damaged window and running scanners over the walls. Ambassador Peltic called out in the Xylene language, a series of musical chiming sounds, but the child didn't respond. The little one just stood frozen, shaking violently, unable to move. Daeho didn't stop to think. His body moved before his brain caught up. He crossed the council floor in quick strides. Behind him, he heard High Arbiter Vaughn's voice. "Captain Kim, return to your designated safety zone immediately." But Daeho was already climbing the stairs to the observation deck, taking them 2 at a time. He reached the upper level in seconds and dropped to one knee beside the trembling child. "Hey there," he said softly, keeping his voice low and gentle. "You're okay. Everything's going to be okay." The child stared at him with those huge dark eyes. Tears ran down the shimmering blue cheeks. The small body shook so hard that Daeho could hear the child's teeth chattering, or whatever the Xylene equivalent was. Daeho slowly extended his hand, palm up, unthreatening. "Open. My name is Daeho. I'm here to help you." The child made a small sound, not words, just a frightened whimper that needed no translation. "I know you're scared," Daeho said gently, "but we need to get you somewhere safer, okay? This window is damaged. We need to move." He glanced back down at the council floor. Every single delegate had stopped moving. They all stood perfectly still in their safe zones, staring up at him. Even the security guards had frozen in place, watching. The child whimpered again, and Daeho's attention snapped back. Without asking permission from anyone, not the council, not the parent, not the security team, he carefully lifted the small Xylene into his arms. The child immediately grabbed onto his uniform with those three-fingered hands, gripping the fabric desperately. Deo felt the small body trembling against his chest like a frightened bird. He adjusted his hold carefully, supporting the child's head the way he'd watched his sister do with her babies back on Earth. "There we go," he murmured. "I've got you now. Nothing's going to hurt you. I promise." He started walking back down the stairs, moving steadily but carefully. The child pressed their face against his shoulder. Deho could feel two small hearts beating rapidly against his chest. The Xylene had dual cardiovascular systems. He remembered from his studies. As his boots touched the main council floor, the silence hit him like a physical force. 12 alien species, dozens of delegates, security personnel, administrative staff. Every single being in the chamber stood motionless, watching him in absolute silence. High Arbiter Vaughn spoke first. His crystal body seemed to vibrate with some emotion Deho couldn't identify. "Captain Kim, what are you doing?" Deho looked down at the child in his arms, then back at Vaughn. The answer seemed obvious. "I'm helping them. They were scared." The security protocols would have gotten them eventually, Deho interrupted gently. But they needed help now. Ambassador Peltic moved forward slowly. Their skin displayed colors Deho had never seen before in his studies, a strange mixture of what might be relief mixed with something else. Confusion, maybe? Or shock. "Captain Kim," Peltic said carefully in accented English, You touched my offspring." There was something strange in the way the ambassador said it. Not anger. Not exactly gratitude either. Something between complete shock and wonder, as if Deho had just done something impossible. "I'm sorry if I broke some rule," Deho said, though he wasn't entirely sure what he was apologizing for. "I just couldn't leave them up there alone and frightened." He started to hand the child to Peltic, but the little one clung tighter to his uniform, making a distressed chiming sound that clearly meant no. Peltic stopped moving. They wish to remain with you." "I don't understand," Deho said. Counselor Yeshna uncoiled slightly, her reptilian voice sharp with what sounded like fascination. "We are witnessing something unprecedented, Captain Kim. Please, do not move. Do not put the child down." Deho stood there in the center of the most powerful council in the galaxy, holding a shaking alien child in his arms, while every being in the chamber stared at him in stunned silence. He had no idea that this single moment would change the entire galaxy's understanding of what it meant to care. Deho stood perfectly still, feeling the Xylene child's small body trembling against his chest. High Arbiter Vaughn moved closer, his crystal form catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the floor. "Explain your actions, Captain Kim," Vaughn said. His voice didn't sound angry, just deeply curious. Deho shifted the child's weight slightly, making sure to support the small head properly. "There's nothing to explain. They were frightened. I comforted them. That's all." Ambassador Threllkick's antennae began twitching rapidly. The insect-like alien took a step backward. "You made direct physical contact with the offspring. You touched them during a moment of extreme distress." "Yes," Deho said simply. "That's how you calm someone who's scared. You hold them." Threllkick stepped back again, as if Deho had just said something deeply disturbing. My species does not engage in such contact. Our young feed themselves from the moment they hatch. Touch is reserved only for mating or for combat. Nothing else." Counselor Yeshna uncoiled her long snake-like body, her scales making a soft, rustling sound. "The stack guard our eggs with our lives. We will kill any creature that approaches our nests. But once the eggs hatch, the younglings must survive on their own immediately. Physical comfort is completely unknown to us. We do not understand it." Deho looked around the chamber slowly, confusion growing in his mind. "Then how do your children learn that they're safe? How do they know that someone cares about them?" "We provide resources," Vaughn explained in his chiming voice. "Food, shelter, education, protection from danger. These things demonstrate care adequately. But not comfort, not physical reassurance. We do not possess that instinct," Ambassador Peltic said quietly, moving a bit closer to observe their offspring. "Captain Kim, My child has never been held the way you are holding them now. In Xylene culture, when young ones become distressed, we place them inside learning spheres. These are contained environments that regulate their emotional frequencies through sound and light. But we do not touch them like this. The child in Deho's arms had finally stopped shaking. Their skin still showed muted colors, but the rapid flickering had stopped. The small three-fingered hands remained twisted in Deho's uniform, but the desperate grip had relaxed into something gentler. Without thinking about it, Deho began to sway slightly from side to side. Just a subtle rocking motion, barely noticeable. He had done this hundreds of times with his niece and nephew back on Earth. It was automatic, instinctive. Every single delegate in the chamber leaned forward, watching intently. "What are you doing now?" Threlkick asked, his voice filled with fascination and perhaps a little fear. "Rocking them," Deho explained. "The gentle motion is soothing. It helps calm the nervous system, makes them feel safe." He began humming softly without even realizing it at first. An old Korean lullaby his grandmother had sung to him when he was small. The melody was simple and repetitive, designed to comfort rather than entertain. His grandmother had hummed it to his mother, and his mother had hummed it to him, and he had hummed it to his sister's children. The child's large dark eyes began to close slowly. "Remarkable," Vaughn whispered, his entire crystal body beginning to resonate softly with Deho's humming. "The offspring is entering a rest state, without any sedation." "They're not sedated," Deho said gently, still swaying. "They just feel safe now. That's all." A soft sound made Deho look to his right. Lieutenant Minji Park, one of the human security officers, approached quietly. She carried a thermal blanket. She handed it to Deho without saying a word. Understanding immediately what he needed, Deho took the blanket with one hand, while keeping the child secure with his other arm. He wrapped the small Xylene carefully, creating a warm cocoon. The child sighed, a soft musical chiming sound, and their eyes closed completely. Within seconds, the child was asleep. In human development, Deho said quietly, aware that every being in the chamber was listening to his every word, children require many years of care. Human babies are born completely helpless. They cannot walk. They cannot feed themselves. They cannot even hold their own heads up at first. They need to be held, comforted, and taught that the world is a safe place. It's not just about providing resources. It's about emotional connection. "This is instinct?" Yeshna asked, her reptilian eyes fixed on the sleeping child. "It is not trained behavior?" "Both," Deho admitted. "The instinct to protect and comfort vulnerable beings is built into most humans naturally. But we also learn how to do it properly by watching our families, our communities. We learn what works and what doesn't." Ambassador Threlkick moved closer, though still maintaining careful distance. "This explains human aggression patterns. You protect your pack. You become dangerous when defending those you consider yours." "That's part of it," Deho agreed. "And you extended this instinct to my offspring," Peltic said softly. "A being you had never met. A being who is not even your species." "They needed help," Deho said, as if this explained everything. "That's enough reason." Peltic made a sound, a complex series of musical chimes that Deho's translator couldn't quite interpret. "I wanted to comfort my child when I heard them cry out. I wanted to help, but I did not know how. My hands would not move the correct way. My mind could not form the proper actions. I had no instinct to guide me." The admission hung in the air like something heavy. A long silence filled the chamber. Then Counselor Yeshna spoke again. "The Council has been struggling with the problem for several years. In the war displacement camps, we house thousands of young ones from various species. They receive adequate food, shelter, medical care, and education. Yet many show signs of severe developmental trauma. They do not grow properly. They do not learn properly. Some simply stop functioning, despite having everything they need to survive." She paused, her scales rippling with what might have been emotion. "Perhaps they need more than survival resources. Perhaps they need what you just gave this child." Vaughn's crystal body pulsed with light. "Can this be taught? If beings lack the natural instinct, Can they learn the behaviors? Can we train caregivers to provide this comfort? Deho looked down at the sleeping Xylene child in his arms. So small, so peaceful now. He thought about all the children in those displacement camps. Children who had lost their parents. Children who were scared and alone. Children who received food and shelter but never a gentle touch or a soothing voice. I don't know if it can be taught, Deho said honestly, but I'm willing to try. High Arbiter Vaughn's entire form seemed to brighten. Then we shall begin immediately. The Council will provide full resources and authority. This matter takes precedence over all other business. Deho looked around at the assembled delegates. 12 species, dozens of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, all staring at him with a mixture of confusion, hope, and wonder. He had simply picked up a frightened child. Nothing more. Yet somehow, in this moment, he had revealed to them something they had never known they were missing. Medical personnel arrived within minutes, their equipment beeping and scanning. But Ambassador Peltic raised one hand, stopping them. Do not disturb them. My offspring has never rested so peacefully outside a regulation sphere. Leave them be. High Arbiter Vaughn gestured to the other council members with a sweeping motion. The session is postponed. We will convene an emergency inquiry immediately. Deho blinked in surprise. Emergency inquiry? Into what? Into this. Vaughn gestured at him, holding the sleeping child. We must understand what we have just witnessed. This is too important to ignore. The council reformed around him, but instead of returning to their usual positions on the raised platforms, they gathered in a semicircle directly around Deho. He remained standing, unwilling to move and risk waking the child. Lieutenant Park appeared again, this time carrying a chair. She positioned it carefully behind Deho. He sat down slowly, adjusting his hold to keep the child comfortable and secure. Captain Kim, Vaughn began in a formal tone, please explain the biological and cultural basis for your actions today. Deho took a deep breath. Humans evolved as social mammals. Our young are born extremely vulnerable. A human baby cannot walk, cannot feed itself, cannot even regulate its own body temperature properly. Survival absolutely required intense parental care for many years. Without it, the child would die. And this created the touching behavior? Threllkick asked, still maintaining his distance from Deho. It created bonding. Deho explained, physical contact releases certain chemicals in the brain, hormones like oxytocin and dopamine. These chemicals create feelings of safety, trust, and connection. When a human child cries, adult humans experience an almost physical need to comfort them. It actually causes us discomfort to hear a child in distress. Any human? Yeshna's tail curled with interest. Or only the biological parent? Most humans, Deho said, we call it empathy. When we see someone suffering, especially someone vulnerable like a child, we feel an echo of their distress inside ourselves. Helping them eases our own discomfort. It makes us feel better, too. Counselor Hyuk, a floating jellyfish-like being who rarely spoke, drifted forward. His transparent body pulsed with bioluminescent light. This seems evolutionarily inefficient. You spend energy and resources on offspring that are not genetically related to you. Why? In the short term, maybe it seems inefficient. Deho agreed. But humans survived because we cooperated. In ancient times, a whole village would help raise all the children together. If one parent died in a hunting accident or from disease, other adults would step in and care for the orphaned children. This cooperation made our entire species more resilient and more likely to survive. Peltic spoke hesitantly. Captain Kim, do you have offspring of your own? No, Deho said, but I have a sister back on Earth. She has 2 children. My niece is 4 years old, and my nephew is 18 months old. I have cared for them many times when my sister needed help. Yet you extended the same care to my child, Peltic said slowly. A child who is not human, not related to you, not even the same basic biology. Deho looked down at the sleeping Xylene in his arms. The child's blue skin had settled into a peaceful lavender color. They needed help. That's enough reason. The simplicity of his statement seemed to disturb the council even more than a complex explanation would have. Vaughn's crystalline form pulsed with golden light. In human terminology, what you demonstrated is called compassion, correct? Yes, that's right. And all humans possess this trait. Most of us, Deho said carefully. Some humans have more of it than others. And like any trait, it can be strengthened through practice or weakened through bad experiences. Threllkick's antennae drooped downward. The VRYNN have observed human military actions through our intelligence networks. Your warriors show considerable aggression and tactical ruthlessness in combat. How does this reconcile with the gentle behavior we are witnessing right now? Deho met the insectoid's many eyes directly. The same instinct that makes us nurture and protect also makes us extremely dangerous when we are protecting something. Humans will fight with tremendous ferocity to defend those we consider vulnerable or under our care. The instinct works both ways. A pack defense mechanism, Yeshna said. Our family, our community, our tribe. Yes, our pack, Deho acknowledged. But humans have the ability to expand that circle. We can choose to include others who aren't genetically related to us. We can decide that someone else's child deserves protection too. Vaughn tilted his crystalline head thoughtfully. This has profound implications. If humans instinctively protect and bond across genetic lines, this explains your remarkable success at building coalitions with other species. Other races find you compelling to work with, even when they do not fully trust you. Or we find you threatening, Threllkick added sharply. An instinct to protect can easily become an instinct to control, to dominate. It can, Deho admitted honestly. That is why we develop laws, ethics, philosophy, and social structures. We recognize our instincts and then choose consciously how to channel them. We are not slaves to our biology. The child stirred slightly in his arms, making a small questioning sound. Without thinking, Deho adjusted his hold and resumed the gentle rocking motion. The child settled immediately, returning to deep sleep. Every council member watched this tiny adjustment with intense focus. You did not think before acting just now, Vaughn observed. The response was completely automatic. Yes, Deho confirmed. Remarkable, Peltic whispered. I cannot do this. Even watching you, even understanding the mechanical process, my body does not respond this way. The instinct is simply not there. A long silence followed. Finally, Yeshna spoke again, her voice heavy. The Council has been facing a crisis in the war displacement camps. We house thousands of young from various species who lost their parents. They receive adequate nutrition, shelter, medical care, and education. Yet many show severe developmental problems. Some stop growing properly. Others become violent. Some simply lose a will to live, despite having everything necessary for physical survival. She paused, scales rippling. Perhaps they need more than physical resources. Perhaps they need connection. Can this be taught? Vaughn asked directly. If beings lack the natural instinct, can they learn the behaviors through training? Deho considered the question carefully while still rocking the sleeping child. I honestly do not know. The instinct is one thing, but the specific actions can probably be learned. Whether learned actions can replace natural instinct, I cannot say, but I am willing to try teaching anyone who wants to learn. Vaughn's entire crystalline body brightened with hope. Then we shall begin. This takes priority over all other council business. We will assemble resources, facilities, and volunteers. You will teach us, Captain Kim. You will show the galaxy how to care. Deho looked around at the most powerful beings in known space, all watching him with a mixture of hope and confusion. He had simply held a frightened child. That was all. 3 days later, Deho sat in a quiet observation lounge with Ambassador Peltic. The room had wide windows showing the stars beyond. The child, whose name was Silic, rested in a specialized Eileen chair nearby, watching them with curious dark eyes. I have been studying human parenting materials, Peltic said. Their skin displayed thoughtful green patterns. I attempted the holding technique with Silic yesterday evening. How did it go? Deho asked. Poorly. Peltic's colors shifted to embarrassed orange. My arms were too stiff, too rigid. Silic became more distressed instead of calm. I could not find the softness you showed. My body would not cooperate. Deho nodded slowly. May I show you something? Would you be comfortable with that? At Peltic's agreement, Deho called Silic over gently. The child came without hesitation now, having spent considerable time with Deho over the past few days. He lifted the small Xylene carefully, demonstrating his hold. See how I support the weight here at the base, but I keep my arms relaxed? The security and safety come from the structure of the hold itself, not from muscle tension. Tension actually makes it worse. He guided Peltic's arms into the correct position, then carefully transferred Silic. The child squirmed initially, uncomfortable with the change. But Deho kept his hands close, steadying both parent and child. Breathe slowly. Deho coached softly. Let your body relax. Children can feel tension. They sense it and it makes them nervous. Just breathe. Gradually, slowly, Peltic's rigid posture began to soften. Silic's colors shifted from alarmed yellow to curious blue. The child stopped squirming and settled against their parent's chest. Peltic made a sound, a cascading series of emotional chimes that Deho had never heard before. They are calm. With me. My own child is calm in my arms. You are learning, Deho said gently. That is all that matters. Over the following weeks, word spread rapidly through the council stations. High Arbiter Vaughn requested that Deho present his findings to the full assembly of all member species. The presentation was unlike anything Deho had imagined. He brought Lieutenant Park and 2 other human staff members, Simon and Juno, who both had experience with children. Together, they demonstrated basic comfort techniques using volunteer children from the few bonding species present on the station. The key principle, Deho explained to the assembled delegates, is what we call responsive care. You observe the child's signals carefully and respond appropriately to their needs. A cry might indicate hunger, physical pain, fear, or simply a need for attention and connection. Over time, caregivers learn to distinguish between these different needs. Counselor Yeshna raised her head. What about species whose young do not display clear signals that we can easily read? Then you must learn new signals, Simon explained patiently. Each species will be different, but the basic principle remains the same. Observation, response, and adjustment. You watch, you try something, you see if it works, and you adjust based on results. The council voted and agreed to establish a pilot program. 3 displacement camps would receive human advisors and train volunteers from other species who were willing to learn these new caregiving approaches. Deho spent the next 6 months traveling constantly between the camps, teaching, observing, and adjusting protocols for different species. Lieutenant Park took charge of developing formal training programs. Simon created cross-species communication guides that helped caregivers understand different young ones. Juno developed detailed sensory profiles for different species children, explaining what kind of touch, sound, and movement worked best for each. The results surprised even Deho. A young VRYNN orphan who had been completely unresponsive for months began interacting with caregivers after receiving consistent gentle contact on their antennae. A group of stack younglings showed dramatically decreased aggression when provided with regular soothing sessions involving low-frequency humming. Even species that already had some natural bonding instincts showed improvement with more structured responsive care. Ambassador Threllkick, who had been the most skeptical initially, visited one of the camps personally. Deho found him standing in a corner, watching silently. A human volunteer was carefully touching antenna to antenna with a young VRYNN, providing the species-specific comfort the child desperately needed. I was wrong, Threllkick said quietly without looking away from the scene. I believe that instinct without logic was dangerous and primitive, but perhaps logic without compassion is equally limiting to a civilization. Not everyone celebrated the changes. Some traditionalists argued strongly that these methods would weaken their species, making future generations too soft and dependent. Others worried about cultural contamination, insisting that adopting human practices would erase their own identities. But in the displacement camps, undeniable changes occurred. Children who had been completely silent for months began to vocalize again. Young beings who had refused all food began eating normally. Measurable trauma responses decreased significantly across all species involved in the program. High Arbiter Vaughn called Deho to a private meeting in his crystalline chambers. The Council wishes to expand the program galaxy-wide. We are prepared to establish a Galactic Institute for Developmental Care. We would like you to serve as its director. Deho shook his head firmly. I am deeply honored, but I am not qualified. I am not a developmental psychologist or a xenobiologist. I am just a ship captain who happened to hold a scared child when no one else did. Precisely why you must lead this, Vaughn insisted. You acted from instinct and heart rather than protocol. That is exactly what we need. Someone who understands that care cannot be reduced to pure procedure and rules. Then let me suggest someone far better qualified, Deho said. Dr. Yunahan is a child development specialist from Earth. She has been advising our program remotely for months. She has both the scientific expertise and the compassionate understanding needed. She is the right choice. Vaughn's crystalline structure pulsed with approval. Bring her here. We will offer her the position. But you must remain involved, Captain Kim. You began this transformation. You showed us what we were missing. Your presence matters. Deho looked out the window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, in camps across dozens of worlds, children were being held for the first time. Children were learning that they mattered, that they were safe, that someone cared. I will stay involved, he promised. These children deserve every chance we can give them. Vaughn's light pulsed warmly. The galaxy is changing, Captain, because you showed us that strength and gentleness are not opposites, that protecting the vulnerable is perhaps the highest calling of any civilization. Deho thought about Silic, now thriving with a parent who had learned to hold them. He thought about all the other children who would benefit from what they were building. One simple act, holding a frightened child, had started a revolution of compassion that was spreading across the stars. 1 year after the incident in the council chamber, Deho stood on the observation deck of the newly opened Galactic Institute for Developmental Care. The massive facility orbited in the same space as the council station, a clear sign of how seriously the galaxy now took the well-being of its young. Below him, in carefully designed multi-species care rooms, he watched trained caregivers representing 9 different species working with children. A VRYNN specialist named Kel-9 gently stroked the back of a distressed youngling. The movements were still somewhat mechanical and awkward, but they were earnest and caring. A stacked caregiver hummed low-frequency tones to soothe a group of hatchlings gathered around her. Dr. Yunahan appeared beside him, holding a datapad filled with information. The latest statistics are remarkable. We are seeing a 73% reduction in trauma markers across all species in the program. How many facilities are operational now? Deho asked. 17 fully operational, with 32 more in various stages of development. Yuna said, clear pride in her voice. And it is spreading beyond just displacement camps. Several species are now requesting training for their standard childcare facilities on their homeworlds. Deho smiled. We are changing how the entire galaxy understands childhood. You changed it. Yuna corrected him gently. That single moment in the council chamber, when you simply picked up a frightened child without hesitation, that moment changed everything forever. A soft chime announced visitors at the door. Peltic entered with Silic, who was significantly larger now and moved with confident energy. The young Xylene spotted Deho immediately and rushed forward, their skin bright with happy colors. Deho knelt down and opened his arms wide. Silic collided with him in an enthusiastic hug, chiming excitedly in their musical language. They absolutely insisted on visiting today, Peltic said warmly. Silic wanted to show you something special. The child pulled back slightly and held up a drawing. It was created with bioluminescent ink on specialized paper. The image showed 2 figures clearly, one human, one Xylene, holding hands beneath what looked like stars. It is beautiful, Deho said sincerely, taking the drawing carefully. Thank you so much, Silic. I will treasure this. The child chimed a happy response, then looked expectantly at Peltic with outstretched arms. The ambassador knelt smoothly, movements now practiced and completely natural, and opened their arms. Scylla transferred from Deo's embrace to their parents with easy trust and no hesitation. Peltic met Deho's eyes over their child's head. I can do this now. I can hold my own child and make them feel safe. Because you showed me how. You gave me the greatest gift possible, true connection with my own offspring. Later that day, the High Council convened for a formal ceremony. Deho stood before them in his dress uniform, uncomfortable with all the attention, but deeply honored by their intent. High Arbiter Vaughn addressed the full assembly. Billions across the galaxy watched via livestream from dozens of worlds. 1 year ago, we witnessed an act that seemed completely unremarkable to the person performing it, yet utterly revolutionary to those of us observing. Captain Deho Kim responded to a child distressed with pure instinct, with compassion, and with courage. Vaughn's crystalline form pulsed with solemn light. We who built great civilizations based on logic, efficiency, and strength have forgotten something crucial. Or perhaps we never knew it at all. The vulnerable require more than just resources and protection. They require heart. They require connection. The Arbiter turned directly to face Deho. The Council formally recognizes empathetic responsive care as a galactic standard for all developing beings, regardless of species. Furthermore, we establish what we are calling the Kim Accord. This accord mandates that all member species must provide training in cross-species developmental support for their caregivers. Deho felt his throat tighten with emotion. I do not need an accord named after me. I just wanted to help. You held a shaking child while we all watched in silence, Vaughn finished for him. And in doing so, you taught the entire galaxy how to care. The ceremony concluded with a formal vote. The Kim Accord passed with complete unanimity. Not a single opposing vote. Afterward, as delegates gathered and talked, Councilor Yeshna approached Deho directly. I have significant news from my homeworld. The Stack Education Collective has formally requested human advisors. We wish to completely restructure our entire approach to raising our young. That is incredible, Deho said, genuinely amazed. It is necessary, Yeshna corrected firmly. We have carefully reviewed all the data. Children who receive compassionate care become healthier adults in every measurable way. Emotionally, socially, even physically superior. We were actively limiting our own species' potential through our old methods. Ambassador Threllkick joined them, his antennae displaying unusual warmth. The VRYNN Assembly has approved similar sweeping measures. It is deeply uncomfortable for my species. Change always is, but growth requires discomfort. As the evening continued, Deho found himself constantly surrounded by delegates. Everyone asked questions, sought guidance, and shared their own early attempts at more compassionate caregiving. Some stories were awkward and clumsy. Others were surprisingly touching. Finally, he excused himself politely and returned to the Institute's quiet observation deck. Dr. Yuna found him there a short time later, staring out at the infinite stars. Overwhelmed, she asked kindly. I just held a scared child, Deho said quietly. That is literally all I did. You showed the galaxy that strength and gentleness are not opposites, Yuna said. You demonstrated that protecting the vulnerable is actually the highest expression of true civilization. That matters more than you realize. Deho's communicator chimed softly, a message from his sister back on Earth, with a video file attached. He opened it to see his niece and nephew waving enthusiastically at the camera. Uncle Deho, his niece squealed with excitement. Everyone at my school says you are a hero who changed the whole galaxy. His nephew, still too young for clear speech, simply held up his chubby arms in the ancient universal gesture that needed no words. Pick me up. Hold me. Deho smiled, feeling warm flood through his chest. Tell him I am not a hero. I am just someone who believes that when a child reaches for you, you should always reach back. The video ended. Through the observation window, he watched a VRYNN caregiver successfully soothe a crying youngling. The movements were no longer awkward or uncertain, but gentle and sure and filled with purpose. Throughout the entire galaxy, in displacement camps and care facilities, on homeworlds and distant colony stations, beings of 100 different species were learning a simple truth that humans had known instinctively for millennia. Every child deserves to be held when they are afraid. Every child deserves to know they are safe and valued. Every child deserves compassion and connection. One single moment of pure instinct had taught an entire galaxy how to care, and the ripples of that simple act would spread across the stars for countless generations to come.